Welcome back to MJAI Legacy, the channel dedicated to exploring the life and journey of the one and only king of pop, Michael Jackson. Today, we take you back to the very beginning, Michael's childhood, his family, and the environment that shaped him into a musical genius. To truly understand Michael's rise to fame, we must begin where it all started, in Gary, Indiana, inside a small house filled with music, love, and struggle. The Jackson family background. Michael Joseph Jackson was born on August 29, 1958, in Gary, Indiana, a steel town in the American Midwest. He was the eighth of 10 children in the Jackson family. His father, Joseph Jackson, worked as a crane operator in a steel mill, and his mother, Katherine Jackson, was a homemaker with a deep love for music and faith. The Jackson family lived in a small, two-bedroom house on Jackson Street. Life was far from luxurious. With so many children in one household, money was always tight. The family had to stretch every dollar, and the older children often shared beds. Yet, despite the hardships, there was something special in the Jackson home: music. Katherine loved to play the piano and sing gospel songs, filling the house with melodies of faith and hope. Joseph, on the other hand, had once dreamed of becoming a musician himself. He played guitar in a local R&B band called the Falcons, but his career never took off. Instead, he put all his hopes into his children. Michael's birth and early childhood. When Michael was born, no one could have imagined that this tiny baby would grow up to become the greatest entertainer the world had ever seen. As a child, Michael was curious, energetic, and playful. His smile could light up a room, and he had a natural charm that drew people in. But more importantly, he had an extraordinary sense of rhythm. Katherine recalled that Michael, even as a toddler, would dance to the rhythm of the washing machine or hum melodies before he could even speak properly. Michael often described his early childhood as a mix of innocence and hardship. On the one hand, he was just a little boy who loved cartoons, playing outside, and spending time with his siblings. On the other hand, his family's financial struggles and his father's strict discipline made childhood far from easy. Gary, Indiana. The environment. To understand Michael's beginnings, we must understand Gary. In the late 1950s and early 1960s, Gary was a tough, industrial city. Steel factories dominated the landscape, and most families, including the Jacksons, depended on factory jobs to survive. The neighborhoods were poor, and crime was common. Growing up in Gary taught Michael about resilience. He learned to appreciate the value of hard work from an early age. The Jackson family did not have much, but they had each other, and they had music. A family of music. Music was the heartbeat of the Jackson household. Katherine's gospel songs mixed with Joseph's blues and R&B records created a unique environment where the children were constantly surrounded by rhythm and melody. Michael often sat and listened to his older brothers practice. Jackie, Tito, and Jermaine were already experimenting with instruments, while Marlon and Michael were the younger ones watching closely. It wasn't long before Michael couldn't resist joining in. Even at the age of 5, he would sing along, copying the notes perfectly. His voice was higher, sharper, and more emotional than any of his siblings. Joseph noticed this, and though he was a strict father, he quickly realized that Michael had something truly special. Joseph Jackson's discipline. Joseph Jackson is often remembered as a controversial figure in Michael's childhood. He believed in discipline above all else. For him, success required sacrifice, and he was determined to push his children toward greatness. Rehearsals in the Jackson home were no joke. Joseph would gather his sons in the living room, making them practice for hours. Missed notes or wrong steps were not tolerated. Michael later described these times as both painful and formative. On one hand, he feared his father's strictness. On the other hand, he admitted that the discipline helped him become a perfectionist. Even at a young age, Michael understood that he wasn't living a normal childhood. While other kids played outside, he was rehearsing dance steps or memorizing lyrics. This early environment built his work ethic, something that would later define his career. Michael's personality as a child. Despite the tough discipline, Michael's personality shone through. He was known to be sweet, sensitive, and playful. His siblings often remembered how he would make everyone laugh with his impersonations and funny jokes. He loved to dance in front of the mirror, mimicking famous artists like James Brown. Michael also had a strong imagination. He would often escape into his own world, dreaming of adventures beyond Gary, Indiana. These daydreams later fueled his creativity as a songwriter and performer. But even in those early years, there was a sense of loneliness in Michael. Being the youngest in the spotlighted group, he sometimes felt isolated from his peers. He longed for the simple joys of childhood, yet he was constantly preparing for the stage. The birth of a performer. By the time Michael was 6 years old, he was already performing with his older brothers in small shows. Joseph had officially formed a family group called the Jackson Brothers, which later became the Jackson 5. Michael, the youngest, quickly became the standout star. His voice was unlike anything people had heard from a child. It was soulful, emotional, and filled with power well beyond his age. Audiences were amazed at how a little boy could sing with such maturity. Michael's dance moves, inspired by James Brown, added another layer of magic. From the very beginning, Michael wasn't just participating, he was stealing the spotlight. Early struggles and sacrifices. Of course, success didn't come without struggle. The Jackson family had to work harder than ever. Michael's school life often clashed with rehearsals and performances. He would sometimes fall asleep in class because he had been practicing late the night before. Michael also faced teasing from classmates. While other kids were playing sports or hanging out, Michael was on stage, singing in front of strangers. Many couldn't understand his lifestyle, and this sometimes made him feel like an outsider. But deep inside, Michael knew he was destined for something greater. His determination and natural gift pushed him forward. The seeds of greatness. Looking back at Michael's early childhood, it's clear that this period planted the seeds of greatness. His family's struggles taught him resilience. His father's discipline taught him perfection. His mother's faith taught him compassion. And his own imagination gave him creativity beyond measure. Michael's childhood wasn't perfect. In fact, it was filled with challenges that no child should have to endure. Yet, these very challenges shaped him into the king of pop. Without the trials of Gary, Indiana, and without the early discipline of Joseph Jackson, perhaps the world would never have witnessed the genius of Michael Jackson. Conclusion. So, this was the beginning of Michael Jackson's story, the early life and family roots that shaped him. From a small house in Gary to the very first notes he ever sang, Michael's journey had already begun. In our next episode, we'll dive deeper into how the Jackson 5 was formed and how young Michael took his very first steps into the world of fame. Stay tuned to MJAI Legacy, where we continue to celebrate the life and legacy of the King of Pop.